Hey, Cliff, let's start with some good news, and then we'll go into some other news, some of which is good, some of which is not. But I don't know, maybe it was a couple of months ago, you told us the story about a guy, you're from Ohio, and you've been working quite a bit off and on, I believe, with the Innocence Project out there. And
Yes.
there was a guy who I think, well, you tell me the story about him. I remember I think one of the longest times in prison and then be exonerated.
Yeah, that is all correct. I'm on the I live in Cincinnati and located at the University of Cincinnati. Each state has an Innocence Project now, and the one here usually located at law schools, and the one here is centered at UC, and I sit on the board, which means I'm very involved, and really it's an amazing thing, the Innocence Project. And we were part of getting a triple exoneration, or where we maybe 6 months ago now, no, maybe less, 3 months ago. I lose track of time. But such an important case where a really fantastic gentleman by the name of Ricky Jackson spent 39 years, and yes, it was the longest anybody served in prison in U.S. history that we know of, to then be exonerated. And after 39 years, the lawyers that work for our program were a part of the process of freeing him, a big part of that process, and getting him out for a 1975 crime where police basically almost threatened a young child to tell him to say that he'd seen these three guys commit the crime who didn't. And he was sort of racked with guilt for years, and he was only a kid at the time and went through a lot of his own problems, emotional problems because of that, and finally was able to come out and tell a pastor the truth. And long story short, these guys are out of prison now, and I think what you're referring to is that, which is important because not all states do this, is restitution.
Yeah.
And in this case, an Ohio court just awarded him $1 million. Which is enormously important because, as you can imagine, if you're in prison for 39 years, it's not, he went into prison when he was, I'm trying to think of, I think it was 20, 19. He didn't have a career. He had no chance at a career and building skills. And, so it's very hard for him now to make a living after what the state took away from him.
And we should note that $1 million is only about half of what there is no dispute the state owes him. In other words, this is not about him. There very well may be lawsuits, et cetera, after the fact. But because the legislature, I guess in 2010, was it, had passed, basically they created a formula. You get this amount automatically based on how many days I think you were in prison. I'm not exactly.
It's per year. It's 40-something thousand a year. I don't have it in front of me. And I just saw this, literally not long, I think, before you did this morning. So I haven't had a chance to talk to my fellow board members and other people and find out exactly, because I wasn't expecting this to happen at this point. So I don't have more details yet on what went on there, but you're right. If you sit there and you do the math, you'll come to a higher conclusion as to what he should have gotten.
And then there's apparently like attorney fees and all these other things, but they basically just gave him an advance on what the total's going to be. And, that having a system like that, when you contemplate things like the Central Park Five, right, where you had these guys who went in as kids, they came out, some of them 7, one guy, I think it was 12 years later, they had to wait 6 or 7, 8 years after they were freed from prison to get any compensation, any type of, and it was only because de Blasio basically, when he got in office, said, we're going to stop fighting this. Because the city, apparently under Bloomberg was like, we're not going to pay them anything.
Which is amazing. Because, he will get another $1 million. I don't know when, at least from my understanding of what they're saying here. So he will get the full amount.
I think they just expedited it and basically just said.
They just basically rushed to get him this $1 million. And I think, part of this process, again, is that, you're 39 years. And so what they've taken away from you financially is, when you, not just your job and your career, but money you'd be putting away for retirement, Social Security, a variety of things. when you sit there and you look at that, obviously that's an enormous part of the puzzle. But I'm sorry. There's also the fact that, and I don't know any of this, so don't take that I'm saying this from knowledge, and I wouldn't share it even if I had that knowledge. I don't know exactly, his emotional situation, but one would imagine you spent 39 years in what is, let's say, not the prison system we would all wish or hope for. The kinds of things that can happen to one in prison, being a victim of violence and other such things. And just the fact that you were there for 39 years and you knew you were innocent the whole time. Who knows what in terms of, counseling and other things you might need when you come out. And you certainly, I know, because my wife's done a lot of work on reentry in her career, that people coming out, just because they're away for a while from everyday society, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not just, all right, you're out of jail, so you can go get a job now, find an apartment, everything just works. There is a lot of work to be done to re-enter into society.
Just contemplate, like, just sort of the change, like the small changes in technology. 40 years ago, no ATMs, no push-button phones. TV had one or two stations. You didn't have seatbelts in your cars. I mean, just everything that you experience on a daily basis has become so foreign in some way. Apparently,
I think about this sometimes, Sam. I don't know if you ever did this with your kids, but it's sort of like the difference between even my youngest, the 3-year difference between my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old is that my 5-year-old will never know anything that doesn't have a touch screen. I mean, he will, because he'll have to at some point, but almost everything now that he would want to use has some sort of, so even little things like that change. When you're talking about the kinds of technological change since the 1970s, I mean, my God, that's a different world.
Yeah.
So yes, the kind of training you need for that is I don't know what they were allowing him to do or not do when it came to computer science and other things in prison. But clearly, I would guess with the kind of money we won't spend on almost any of our system of what's supposed to be rehabilitation, my guess is that it wasn't nearly up to the job of getting what he needed.
Indeed, and
there really should be a national bill of rights,
definitely,
of some sort, for everybody. I mean, with the kind of reform efforts that now are seeing, whether it comes to small amounts of marijuana being decriminalized and what just went on in Connecticut, which is a hugely important story.
And we should just mention in Connecticut now, essentially, because of decriminalization of marijuana in Connecticut. Or you can have your record basically expunged if you. Because
that's the other thing is the stigma of having this on your record. I mean, that obviously in Ricky's case it will be expunged, but even for other people that were put in jail, which they were put in jail because they actually were caught doing something quote unquote wrong, which was having marijuana, which I don't really think is something wrong, but okay, society said it was, and they went there to have that expunged is enormously important. But I mean. I'm just saying, in any case, when you see what's going on right now, Cory Booker and Rand Paul have gotten together on some federal legislation with Kirsten Gillibrand. The two of them have also talked about a wholesale sentencing reform. Well, with all this kind of stuff going on, you'd think that we could add some sort of an effort to that to make sure that those who have improperly and unjustly been imprisoned and come out are guaranteed an amount of money. Because if you think about what even Ricky Jackson's getting in the end, if it's 40-something thousand a year, I don't think most of us would agree to that deal to go to prison.
Right. Oh, definitely. And we should also note that, according to what I've read, the folks from the Innocence Project have basically gotten him a financial advisor who will, help him deal with sort of all that money and make sure that it actually, he doesn't go out and blow it in a week.
No, as you can imagine. I mean, especially if you've never seen anything close to that. I mean, I don't think that's, saying anything sort of condescending. I think for any of us, if
frankly,
we were suddenly given a large amount of money, I mean, I think, Sam, if you were given
I was going to say, despite the fact that I'm not getting $1 million, I would still appreciate somebody providing.
Right. I mean, for example, when the majority report goes public next year,
right,
and you get in on that IPO on the bottom floor, and it shoots up through the roof.
How about somebody show me how to use QuickBooks so that I can keep track of what is in my checking account?
If somebody could remind me how to use an Excel spreadsheet, that would help too.
I don't even know what that is.